Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands as he stepped back from the massive engine core. The fusion reactor hummed with a deep, satisfying vibration that meant everything was running perfectly. Around him, the engineering bay of the trade station buzzed with activity as aliens from dozens of species worked to keep the massive structure operational. "Another miracle human," chirped Zix, a bird like Kalani, whose feathers shifted colors with her emotions. Right now, they were a pleased yellow-green. "That engine was supposed to take 3 cycles to repair. You did it in 1. Marcus shrugged, grabbing a clean rag to wipe his tools. "Just needed to think about it differently. Your people always try to fix the symptoms. I went after the cause." It was true. In the 5 years since humanity had joined the Galactic Confederation, Marcus had noticed that most alien species approached problems in very linear, methodical ways. They followed procedures and protocols that had been established for centuries. Humans, on the other hand, had a tendency to think outside the box to find creative solutions that others missed. "The station commander wants to see you," Zix announced, her feathers shifting to a nervous orange. "In his office, now." Marcus frowned. Commander Vorth was a Hegelian, one of the more aggressive species in the Confederation. Built like a walking tank with thick armored skin and small calculating eyes, Vorth had never been particularly friendly to the human engineers on the station. "Did he say what it was about?" "No, but there are Imperial guards with him, the real ones, not station security." Marcus felt his stomach drop. Imperial guards only showed up for one reason. Someone was in serious trouble with the Galactic Empire. The Empire controlled dozens of star systems and had military might that dwarfed most single-species civilizations. Even the Confederation walked carefully around Imperial interests. "All right," Marcus said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I guess I better not keep them waiting." The walk to the command level felt longer than usual. Marcus's mind raced, trying to think of anything he might have done to attract Imperial attention. He'd been careful to follow all regulations, kept his head down, did his job. The only unusual thing he'd done lately was the engine repair. He'd used a technique that wasn't in any manual, a creative solution that mixed human engineering principles with alien technology. Was that it? Had he somehow violated some Imperial patent or regulation? The command center doors slid open with a soft hiss. Commander Vorth stood behind his desk, his massive frame tense with what Marcus recognized as barely controlled fear. Flanked on either side were 2 Imperial guards in their distinctive black armor, faces hidden behind reflective visors. And standing near the massive viewing window, looking out at the stars, was someone Marcus had only seen in news broadcasts, Empress Zaria herself. She was tall and elegant, even by the standards of her species, the ethereal. Her skin had a faint luminescent quality that seemed to shift between pale blue and silver in the station's artificial light. Her hair, if it could be called that, floated around her head like it was underwater, moving with an otherworldly grace. When she turned to look at him, her eyes were the deep purple of distant nebulae. "Engineer Chen," her voice carried an unusual melodic quality that made the universal translator struggle slightly. "Thank you for coming." Marcus wasn't sure if he should bow, salute, or just stand there. He settled for a polite nod. "Your Imperial Majesty, how can I help you?" A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Direct. I like that. Tell me, Engineer, what do you know about the Fenrir?" The name sent a chill down Marcus's spine. Everyone in the galaxy knew about the Fenrir. They were an ancient race of wolf-like beings, incredibly intelligent and unbelievably dangerous. They had once controlled a significant portion of the galaxy before mysteriously withdrawing from galactic politics centuries ago. Now they lived in isolation on their home worlds, refusing contact with other species. "They're reclusive," Marcus said carefully. "Powerful. They don't like other races very much." Indeed. They consider themselves superior to all other life forms. They refuse our trade, ignore our communications, and have threatened war if we attempt to enter their territory. The Empress moved away from the window, her flowing robes seeming to defy gravity. This has created certain complications for the Empire. Marcus stayed quiet. When rulers started talking about complications, smart people listened. There is a region of space that we need access to, the Empress continued, rich in rare minerals that are essential for our advanced technologies. Unfortunately, it borders Fenrir territory. Any attempt to establish mining operations has resulted in Fenrir ships arriving to drive us away. They're protecting their borders, Marcus said. That seems reasonable. Commander Vorth made a strangled noise, but the Empress held up a hand. Yes, it does. However, we recently discovered that this particular region of space contains the largest known deposit of quintessium in the galaxy. Marcus whistled softly. He'd never seen quintessium, but every engineer in the galaxy knew what it was. A single gram of the stuff could power a city for a year. It was so rare and valuable that most species had never even seen it. The Empire requires this resource, the Empress said firmly. We have tried diplomacy, we have tried negotiation, we have even tried bribery. The Fenrir refused to even acknowledge our messages. So, you want to go to war with them? Marcus asked, confused about why he was involved in this conversation. War with the Fenrir would be costly. Their technology is at least equal to ours, possibly superior. They are fierce warriors with a deep understanding of pack tactics. A war could last decades and cost millions of lives. She paused, studying Marcus with those strange purple eyes. We prefer a different approach. Which is? You are going to talk to them. Marcus blinked. I'm sorry, what? Recent intelligence suggests that there is a single Fenrir ship stationed near the quintessium deposits. Our scouts have observed it for weeks. It appears to be some kind of research vessel studying the asteroid field where the minerals are located. And you want me to... What? Exactly. Make contact, establish communication, find out what they want in exchange for mining rights. Marcus looked around the room, wondering if this was some kind of joke. Your Majesty, I'm just an engineer. I fix engines and repair systems. I'm not a diplomat. No, the Empress agreed. You are something potentially more valuable. You are human. I don't understand. The Empress moved closer, and Marcus caught a scent like ozone and starlight. Humans are new to galactic society. You have no history with the Fenrir, no old grudges or territorial disputes. More importantly, humans have demonstrated remarkable adaptability and creative thinking. Perhaps a fresh perspective is exactly what this situation requires. But why me specifically? Because, Engineer Chen, you have something we need. She gestured to one of the Imperial guards, who stepped forward carrying a small device. Are you familiar with Fenrir biology? Marcus shook his head. They are essentially wolves that evolved intelligence and advanced technology, but they retain many characteristics of their ancestral species: pack behavior, territorial instincts, and most importantly, an acute sensitivity to pheromones and sound frequencies. The guard handed Marcus the device. It looked like a small speaker with several adjustment dials. This is a sonic modulator, the Empress explained. It can replicate the specific sound frequencies that Fenrir use for communication. However, simply making the right sounds is not enough. The Fenrir language incorporates emotional undertones, dominance hierarchies, and pack dynamics that are extremely difficult for most species to master. Most species? Human vocal cords are remarkably flexible. Your people are natural mimics, capable of reproducing sounds that other races cannot. More importantly, humans seem to have an intuitive understanding of pack dynamics, perhaps because your own evolutionary history includes similar social structures. Marcus stared at the device in his hands. You want me to pretend to be a wolf? We want you to speak to them in a way they might actually listen to, as an equal or perhaps even as a superior. That's insane. I don't know anything about being a wolf or pack dynamics or... You know more than you think, the Empress interrupted. Humans organize yourselves into hierarchies. You understand leadership, loyalty, and the importance of protecting your territory. These are concepts that Fenrir respect. Marcus looked around the room again. Commander Vorth was staring at him with undisguised nervousness. The Imperial Guards remained perfectly still. The Empress watched him with an expression that might have been hope. What if they just shoot me out of space? They won't. The Fenrir have a strong sense of honor. They will at least listen to what you have to say before deciding whether to kill you. That's not very reassuring. Engineer Chen, the Empire is prepared to offer you substantial compensation for this service, enough to set you up for life, on any world you choose. You would also be performing a great service for galactic peace. Marcus thought about it. The smart thing to do would be to decline politely and go back to fixing engines. But something about the challenge appealed to him. And if he was being honest, the idea of being the first human to make contact with the mysterious Fenrir was exciting. If I agree to do this, I want a few things. The Empress nodded. Name them. First, I want a ship I can trust. Something fast with good engines and reliable systems. Second, I want complete tactical information about the Fenrir vessel. Size, capabilities, weapons. Third, if this goes wrong and I end up dead, I want the Empire to take care of my sister back on Earth. Done. What else? I want time to prepare. At least a week to study everything we know about Fenrir culture and practice with that sonic device. Acceptable. Marcus took a deep breath. Then I guess I'm your wolf whisperer. The next week passed in a blur of intensive study. Imperial scholars provided him with every scrap of information they had about Fenrir society, biology, and culture. It wasn't much. The Fenrir had been isolationists for so long that most knowledge about them was centuries old. What he learned was both fascinating and intimidating. The Fenrir were apex predators who had developed technology while retaining their pack instincts. Their society was organized around complex hierarchies based on strength, intelligence, and honor. They valued direct communication, despised deception, and had a warrior culture that prized courage above all else. The sonic modulator proved to be a remarkable piece of technology. After several days of practice, Marcus found he could reproduce the basic Fenrir greeting sounds, though he suspected his accent was terrible. The emotional undertones were harder. The device could help him match the frequencies, but understanding what emotions to convey required a deeper understanding of wolf psychology. He spent hours watching old Earth documentaries about wolves, studying pack behavior and social dynamics. Surprisingly, much of it felt familiar. Humans weren't so different from wolves in some ways. They both lived in social groups, had complex hierarchies, and valued loyalty and cooperation. The ship the Empire provided was a sleek courier vessel called the Messenger. It was small but fast, with engines that Marcus spent a full day inspecting and tuning. If things went wrong, speed might be his only defense. On the morning of departure, the Empress came to see him off personally. She found him in the ship's small engineering bay, running final checks on the systems. Nervous? She asked. Terrified, Marcus admitted, but also excited. This is either going to be the most amazing thing I've ever done or the last thing I ever do. For what it's worth, I believe you have a better chance than anyone else we could send. Why? Because I'm human? Because you see problems differently than the rest of us. That engine you repaired last week, 3 different teams of expert engineers had tried to fix it using standard procedures. You ignored the procedures and found a solution no one else had considered. Marcus nodded slowly. Think outside the box. Exactly. The Fenrir are a box we've been trying to understand for centuries. Perhaps it's time for a human perspective. As Marcus prepared to launch, he reviewed his plan one more time. He would approach the Fenrir ship slowly, broadcasting friendly intentions on all channels. He would use the sonic modulator to identify himself as a neutral party seeking communication. If they were willing to talk, he would try to establish his credentials as someone worth listening to. The key, according to the Imperial xenobiologists, was to demonstrate that he understood pack dynamics without challenging the Fenrir's authority. He needed to come across as confident but not aggressive, respectful but not submissive. The messenger slipped away from the trade station and jumped to hyperspace. 3 days later, Marcus dropped out of FTL at the edge of the Quintessium field. Space was beautiful here. Asteroids drifted in slow orbits around a young blue star, their surfaces glittering with mineral deposits. And there, hanging motionless among the rocks like a patient predator, was the Fenrir ship. It was smaller than Marcus had expected, but clearly built for war. The hull was a matte black that seemed to absorb light, and weapon ports were visible along its flanks. It looked like a wolf, sleek, dangerous, and ready to strike. Marcus activated his communications array and began broadcasting on standard diplomatic frequencies. Unknown vessel. This is Engineer Marcus Chen aboard the ship Messenger. I am a human representing neither the Empire nor the Confederation. I request permission to communicate. Silence. He tried again, this time using the sonic modulator to add Fenrir greeting tones to his message. Honored Fenrir vessel, I am Marcus Chen, human engineer. I seek words with your pack leader. I come in peace and offer knowledge. Still nothing. Marcus took a deep breath and tried a different approach. According to his research, wolves often used scent markers to establish territory and identity. Maybe the Fenrir ship was doing something similar, broadcasting identification signals that his equipment couldn't detect. He adjusted his sensors and ran a full-spectrum analysis of the Fenrir vessel. There, faint electromagnetic signals on frequencies that weren't normally used for communication. The signals had patterns, rhythms that reminded him of heartbeats, or more precisely, multiple heartbeats in a synchronized rhythm. Pack synchronization. Marcus quickly recalibrated the sonic modulator and began broadcasting his own rhythmic signal, trying to match the pattern. It felt ridiculous, but everything about this mission was ridiculous. This time, the response was immediate. A new signal appeared on his screens, stronger, more complex, and then a voice, deep and resonant, speaking accented but understandable standard galactic. Human vessel, you broadcast pack song, but you are not Fenrir. Explain this mystery. Marcus's heart raced. First contact. He activated the sonic modulator and tried to project confidence and respect in his response. I am Marcus Chen, human engineer. I have studied the songs of your people in hopes of showing proper respect. I seek an audience with your pack leader to discuss matters of mutual benefit. A long pause. Then, you are bold to approach Fenrir space, little human, but boldness alone does not earn audience rights. What do you offer that would interest the children of the Great Hunt? Marcus had prepared for this question, but hearing it asked by an actual Fenrir made his carefully rehearsed answers feel inadequate. He decided to go with honesty. I offer a human perspective on an old problem. Your people and the Empire have been at an impasse regarding this region of space. Perhaps a neutral voice could find solutions that have been overlooked. You speak of neutrality, yet you come in an Imperial ship bearing Imperial technology. Marcus glanced at his scanner readings. The Fenrir sensors were apparently very good if they could identify Imperial manufacturing signatures. The ship was provided by the Empire, yes, but I am not Imperial. I am human, and I speak for myself alone. Another pause, this one longer. Marcus imagined the Fenrir crew discussing his request, weighing his words against their own policies and protocols. Finally, Human Marcus Chen, you will be permitted to dock with our vessel. You will come aboard alone and unarmed. Any attempt at deception or aggression will result in your immediate death. Do you accept these terms? Marcus swallowed hard. I accept. Follow the guidance beam. Deviate from the prescribed course and you will be destroyed. A new signal appeared on Marcus's navigation display. A tight beam transmission that laid out a precise approach vector. He engaged the autopilot and let the messenger follow the alien guidance system. As he drew closer to the Fenrir ship, he could see details that hadn't been visible from a distance. The hull wasn't just black. It was covered in intricate patterns that might have been decorative or functional. Weapon ports tracked his approach with mechanical precision, and there, on what he assumed was the command section, symbols that looked like stylized wolf heads. A docking bay opened in the ship's side, barely large enough for the messenger. Marcus maneuvered carefully into the bay, feeling the artificial gravity take hold as atmospheric fields sealed behind him. Through the cockpit window, he could see a small, welcoming committee waiting for him. 3 figures in what looked like environmental suits, though the design was unlike anything he'd seen before. Each figure was tall and powerfully built, moving with a fluid grace that spoke of perfect physical conditioning. Marcus checked his own environmental suit one last time. The air composition readings suggested the Fenrir ship maintained an atmosphere he could breathe, but he wasn't taking any chances. The airlock cycled, and Marcus stepped out of his ship into an alien world. The docking bay was functional but beautiful, with curved walls that seemed to flow like water frozen in motion. Lighting came from strips embedded in the ceiling, providing a warm, golden glow that reminded Marcus somehow of a sunset through forest trees. But it was the Fenrir themselves that took his breath away. They had removed their helmets, revealing faces that were unmistakably lupine, but also unmistakably intelligent. Their fur was a pristine white that seemed to glow in the ship's lighting, and their eyes were a brilliant ice blue that seemed to see right through him. They were tall. The shortest was easily 7 feet, and moved with a predator's confidence. The center figure stepped forward and spoke, his voice carrying easily across the bay despite the lack of obvious amplification. I am Alpha Kodiak, pack leader of the research vessel Winter's Fang. You are the human who seeks audience. It wasn't a question. Marcus activated his sonic modulator and tried to project the same confidence he heard in the Fenrir's voice. I am Marcus Chen, human engineer. I thank you for granting me this meeting, Alpha Kodiak. The Fenrir's ears twitched. Surprise? Amusement? Marcus couldn't tell. You speak our formal greetings adequately for an outsider. Come, we will hear what you have to say. As they walked through the ship's corridors, Marcus was struck by the craftsmanship of everything around him. The walls seemed to be grown rather than built, flowing in organic curves that created a sense of movement and life. Lighting followed their progress, brightening ahead of them and dimming behind, as if the ship itself was alive and aware. They passed other crew members, all of them white-furred Fenrir who watched Marcus with alert, intelligent eyes. He counted at least 15, suggesting this was a substantial vessel despite its compact appearance from outside. The Alpha led him to what was clearly the ship's central command area. It was circular, with workstations arranged around a central holographic display that showed their position relative to the asteroid field. The display was incredibly detailed, showing mineral compositions, gravitational fields, and what looked like planned mining routes. You study the quintessium deposits, Marcus observed. We study many things, Alpha Kodiak replied. Sit. A chair rose from the floor near one of the workstations, clearly designed for humanoid occupants. Marcus sat, noting that the Fenrir crew continued their work around him but kept their ears turned his way. They were listening to every word. "Speak, human engineer. What perspective do you offer on the old problem between my people and the Empire?" Marcus took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would determine whether he lived or died, whether his mission succeeded or failed. "Alpha, from what I understand, the Empire wants access to the quintessium deposits in this region. Your people have prevented this access to protect your territory. Both sides see this as a zero-sum situation. Either the Empire gets what they want, or the Fenrir maintain their sovereignty. But what if there's a third option?" The Alpha's ears perked forward. Definite interest. "Continue. The Empire needs quintessium for their advanced technologies. But they don't necessarily need to control the deposits themselves. What if the Fenrir were willing to extract and sell the quintessium directly?" "We are not merchants," one of the other Fenrir said, his tone suggesting the very idea was distasteful. "No," Marcus agreed. "You're warriors and explorers. But you're also scientists." He gestured to the holographic display. "This is research equipment, not mining gear. You're studying the asteroids for scientific purposes." Alpha Kodiak remained silent, but Marcus could see he was thinking. What if the Fenrir maintained complete control over this region, but established a research station here? You could study the unique properties of quintessium formation while occasionally extracting samples for trade. The Empire gets the resources they need. The Fenrir maintain sovereignty over their territory, and galactic science benefits from your research. "And what does humanity gain from this arrangement?" the Alpha asked. Marcus smiled. "The satisfaction of solving a problem everyone else said was impossible. And maybe, if the Fenrir were willing, a chance to learn from the most advanced scientists in the galaxy." The command center fell silent, except for the soft hum of ship systems. Marcus could feel the eyes of every Fenrir on him, weighing his words and his intentions. Finally, Alpha Kodiak spoke. "This proposal has merit, but it assumes the Empire would accept Fenrir terms for trade. They are not known for accepting arrangements they do not control." "Then maybe it's time they learned," Marcus said. "The Empire is powerful, but they're not the only power in the galaxy. The Confederation, the free worlds, the independent systems, they all need quintessium too. If the Fenrir were willing to trade fairly with everyone, the Empire might find themselves forced to accept reasonable terms or risk being excluded from the market entirely." The Alpha's eyes widened slightly. "You propose economic leverage. I propose free trade. Let the market decide value, not political power." Another long silence. Then Alpha Kodiak stood, moving to the central display. He manipulated the controls, and the asteroid field rotated slowly, revealing details that Marcus hadn't noticed before. "Human Marcus Chen, you see this asteroid cluster?" Marcus studied the display. "Yes, Alpha. It contains approximately 47% of the galaxy's known quintessium reserves, enough to supply every known civilization for centuries." Marcus felt his jaw drop. He'd known the deposits were large, but this was beyond anything the Empire had suspected. "The Empire knows only of the surface deposits," the Alpha continued. "Their surveys detected perhaps 5% of what actually exists here. They believe they need this region for survival. In truth, they need it for dominance." "And you've known this all along?" "We have known. We have studied. We have waited." "Waited for what?" Alpha Kodiak turned to face him, and Marcus saw something in those ice-blue eyes that might have been respect. "Waited for someone to offer a solution based on cooperation instead of conquest. Waited for someone to see beyond the immediate problem to the greater possibilities." Marcus felt a surge of hope. "Then you'll consider the proposal?" "I will consider it, but first you must prove that you understand what you are suggesting." "I don't understand." The Alpha gestured to another workstation where complex mathematical equations scrolled across multiple displays. You claim to be an engineer. Prove it. Show me how human creativity solves problems that confound others. Marcus moved to the workstation, studying the equations. They seemed to be related to asteroid mining, but the mathematics were incredibly complex, involving orbital mechanics, structural engineering, and what looked like exotic energy interactions. "What's the problem?" he asked. "Quintessium extraction requires precise energy application. Too little, and the crystal matrix remains stable. Too much, and the entire asteroid becomes unstable. Traditional mining techniques yield approximately 12% extraction efficiency." Marcus studied the numbers, his engineer's mind automatically analyzing the problem. The Fenrir were trying to extract quintessium without destabilizing the asteroids that contained it. But they were approaching it like a traditional mining operation, applying energy directly to the crystal matrices. "You're thinking about this wrong," Marcus said after several minutes. The Fenrir around him tensed. Apparently telling their Alpha that his approach was wrong wasn't considered polite. "Explain," Alpha Kodiak said, his voice carefully neutral. Marcus started manipulating the display, running new calculations. "You're trying to extract the crystals by breaking them away from the surrounding material. But what if you don't extract them at all?" "I do not understand." "Look at these energy readings. The quintessium crystals are naturally storing massive amounts of energy. Instead of trying to mine them, what if you could tap that energy directly? Use the asteroids as natural power plants." Marcus's fingers flew over the alien interface, surprising himself with how intuitive the system was. The mathematics began to shift as he adjusted the variables. If you installed collection arrays at specific resonance points around each asteroid, you could draw energy directly from the quintessium matrices without destabilizing them. The crystals would continue to grow, actually becoming more efficient over time. The display showed his revised calculations. Instead of 12% extraction efficiency, his approach showed a theoretical efficiency of over 90%, with the added benefit of sustainability. The command center was absolutely silent. Then Alpha Kodiak began to laugh. It was a sound unlike anything Marcus had ever heard, deep, rich, and somehow completely canine. The other Fenrir joined in, their laughter filling the space with joyous sound. "Human engineer," the Alpha said when the laughter subsided. "You have just solved a problem my people have been working on for 3 centuries. Marcus blinked. "I have. Traditional Fenrir thinking is very thorough but also very linear. We saw the crystals as objects to be extracted. You saw them as systems to be utilized. It is a completely different paradigm. So the proposal is accepted, with modifications." Alpha Kodiak returned to the central display, manipulating it to show the entire asteroid field. "The Fenrir will establish a permanent research and energy collection facility here. We will sell energy rather than raw materials, maintaining complete control over the source while providing what the galaxy needs." Marcus felt a wave of relief and excitement. "The Empire will accept our terms or they will do without." The Alpha's voice carried absolute confidence. "With this technology, we can supply energy to the entire galaxy. No single government can afford to be excluded from such a market." "And humanity?" Alpha Kodiak studied him with those penetrating blue eyes. "Humanity will be our first official partner. Your species sees problems differently than others. That perspective is valuable." "I'm just one human. I can't speak for my entire species." "No, but you can speak for yourself. Marcus Chen, human engineer. I offer you a position as liaison between the Fenrir and the rest of the galaxy. You would work here, on this station, helping to solve the problems that arise when different species try to cooperate." Marcus stared at him. "You're offering me a job?" I am offering you the chance to shape the future of galactic cooperation. Your creative thinking could help prevent the kind of conflicts that have plagued our region of space for centuries. It was an incredible opportunity, but Marcus thought of his sister back on Earth, his comfortable life as a station engineer. I need time to think about it. Of course, but first you must return to the Empire and present our terms. They will not be pleased to learn that their position is weaker than they believed. Marcus nodded. What exactly are your terms? Alpha Kodiak activated a recording device and spoke formally. The Fenrir claim this region of space as sovereign territory. We will establish an energy production facility here, using our own technology and personnel. We will sell energy to any civilization at fair market rates, with no political conditions or exclusive contracts. Any attempt to seize this facility by force will be considered an act of war against the Fenrir people. That's pretty straightforward. We prefer direct communication. Will you carry this message to Empress Zarya? I will. Marcus hesitated. Alpha, can I ask you something? Speak. Why did you trust me? I could have been a spy or an assassin, or just an idiot who didn't understand what he was getting into. The Alpha's ears tilted forward in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as amusement. Human. From the moment you broadcast pack song to request communication, we knew you were extraordinary. Most species cannot even perceive the emotional harmonics of our language, let alone reproduce them. The sonic modulator could help with frequencies, yes, but the emotional content, the respect and sincerity we heard in your voice, that came from you. You understood instinctively how to address us as equals rather than superiors or inferiors. Marcus thought about this. I studied wolves before coming here. Pack behavior, social hierarchies. I guess some of it stuck. More than stuck. You demonstrated that humans can bridge the gap between different forms of intelligence. That is a rare and valuable gift. As Marcus prepared to return to his ship, Alpha Kodiak walked with him back to the docking bay. The other crew members they passed all nodded respectfully to Marcus, a gesture he was pretty sure they didn't extend to many aliens. Marcus Chen, the Alpha said as they reached the messenger, when you return to present our terms to the Empire, remember this. You are not just a messenger. You are proof that cooperation between species is possible. Do not let them dismiss the importance of that. I'll remember. Good. And Marcus? When you decide about our offer, know that the Fenrir remember those who help us. You will always have a place among our pack. As Marcus piloted the messenger away from the Winter's Fang, he looked back at the sleek Fenrir ship hanging among the asteroids. In a few hours, he would jump to hyperspace and begin the journey back to the trade station. In a few days, he would be standing before the Empress again, delivering news that would change the balance of power in the galaxy. But for now, he just marveled at what had happened. A human engineer had walked onto an alien ship, proposed a completely new approach to an ancient problem, and convinced one of the galaxy's most reclusive species to become active participants in galactic commerce. It was, he reflected, exactly the kind of impossible thing that humans seemed to be good at. The hyperspace jump engaged, and Marcus began composing his report to the Empire. He had a feeling that Empress Zarya was going to be very interested in what he had to say, and somewhere in the back of his mind he was already thinking about Alpha Kodiak's offer. A chance to help shape galactic cooperation, to solve problems that others thought were impossible, to bridge the gaps between species that had never understood each other. It sounded like exactly the kind of challenge that would drive him crazy. It also sounded like exactly what he wanted to do with the rest of his life. The journey back to the trade station gave Marcus plenty of time to think about what he would tell Empress Zarya. The Fenrir terms were clear and non-negotiable, but he suspected the Empire wouldn't see it that way initially. They were used to getting what they wanted through superior firepower or political pressure. The concept of dealing with an equal partner might take some adjustment. 3 days later, Marcus found himself once again in Commander Vorth's office, facing the Empress and her Imperial guards. This time, however, the atmosphere felt different. There was tension in the room that hadn't been there before. "Engineer Chen," the Empress said without preamble, "our long-range sensors detected your ship in extended contact with the Fenrir vessel. We assume you were successful in establishing communication." "Yes, Your Majesty. I was able to meet with their pack leader, Alpha Kodiak. He was willing to listen to my proposals." "Excellent. What are their terms for mining rights?" Marcus took a deep breath. "They're not offering mining rights, Your Majesty. They're offering something different." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "Explain." "The Fenrir proposed to establish a permanent energy production facility in the asteroid field. They would extract and process quintessium using their own technology and personnel, then sell energy to any civilization at fair market rates. Energy sales rather than raw material access." The Empress considered this. "The terms are acceptable, assuming the rates are reasonable and supply is guaranteed. There are additional conditions. Such as? The Fenrir claim the entire region as sovereign territory. They will trade with any civilization equally, with no exclusive contracts or political conditions, and any attempt to seize the facility by force would be considered an act of war." The silence that followed was profound. Commander Vorth's massive frame had gone completely rigid. The Imperial guards shifted slightly, hands moving closer to their weapons. The Empress herself remained perfectly still, but Marcus could see something dangerous sparking in her purple eyes. "They wish to dictate terms to the Empire," she said finally, her voice carrying an edge that made Marcus very glad he wasn't on the receiving end of her displeasure. "They wish to operate as an independent power, Your Majesty, the same way the Empire operates in its own territory. The Empire controls dozens of star systems and commands fleets that could level worlds. The Fenrir have what? A few ships and an attitude?" Marcus hesitated. This was the moment when he had to decide how much to reveal. Alpha Kodiak hadn't specifically told him to keep the true size of the quintessium deposit secret, but he also hadn't given permission to share that information. "Your Majesty, I think the Fenrir position is stronger than it appears. They've been studying those asteroids for a very long time. They know things about the quintessium deposits that our surveys missed." "What kind of things?" "I'm not sure I should say. That information was shared with me in confidence." The Empress stood up from her chair, moving with fluid grace to stand directly in front of Marcus. Up close, her otherworldly beauty was almost overwhelming, but there was something predatory in her gaze that reminded him uncomfortably of the Fenrir. "Engineer Chen, you were sent as our representative. Any information you gathered belongs to the Empire." "With respect, Your Majesty, I wasn't sent as a spy. I was sent to establish communication and find a peaceful solution. The Fenrir trusted me with certain information because they believed I was acting in good faith. And you were acting in good faith. Good faith toward the Empire that sent you." Marcus felt sweat gathering on his forehead. This was getting dangerous. "Your Majesty, if I betray the Fenrir trust now, any future negotiations will be impossible. They'll never deal with the Empire again. There may not be any future negotiations." The Empress turned away, moving back to the window that looked out at the stars. "The Empire has been patient with Fenrir isolation for centuries, but this region of space is too valuable to leave in the hands of a single, uncooperative species. They're offering to cooperate, just on equal terms." "No one deals with the Empire on equal terms, Engineer. That is not how galactic politics works." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What are you planning, Your Majesty?" The Empire has 3 battle fleets within a week's travel of Fenrir space. If necessary, we can blockade their territory until they see reason. That would be a mistake. The words were out of Marcus's mouth before he could stop them. Commander Vorth made a sound like an angry hippopotamus, and the Imperial guards tensed visibly. The Empress turned back to face him, her expression unreadable. Explain. The Fenrir aren't just another minor species that can be intimidated. They have technology that matches yours, possibly exceeds it. More importantly, they have something the entire galaxy needs. If you attack them, you won't just be fighting the Fenrir, you'll be fighting everyone who depends on quintessium energy. The galaxy depends on the Empire for order and stability. The galaxy depends on energy for everything. If the Fenrir decide to cut off supply to anyone who supports Imperial aggression, how long do you think that order and stability will last? The Empress studied him for a long moment. You speak with remarkable passion for someone who claims to be neutral. I speak with the passion of someone who's seen a solution to an impossible problem. Your Majesty, the Fenrir are offering you exactly what you need: unlimited access to quintessium energy. The only cost is acknowledging that they have the right to control their own territory. And if we refuse? Then you get nothing, and the rest of the galaxy gets everything. Another long silence. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat in the quiet room. Finally, the Empress spoke. You mentioned that the Fenrir know things about the deposits that our surveys missed. I want those details. I can't give you information that was shared with me in confidence. Then you can return to the Fenrir and ask them to share it directly. Marcus blinked. You want me to go back? I want you to arrange a formal meeting between Fenrir representatives and Imperial negotiators, somewhere neutral, where both sides can present their positions fully. And in the meantime? In the meantime, the Empire will prepare for all contingencies. The Empress moved back to her chair, settling into it with regal grace. Engineer Chen, you have done excellent work establishing first contact. But now the real diplomacy begins. What do you want me to tell them? Tell them that the Empire is willing to discuss their proposal, but that any formal agreement will require full disclosure of all relevant information. Tell them that we expect good faith negotiations, not ultimatums. And if they refuse, then we will proceed with alternative measures. Marcus left the meeting with a sick feeling in his stomach. He understood the Empress's position. The Empire was used to being the dominant power in any negotiation, but he also understood the Fenrir position. They had been isolated for centuries specifically to avoid this kind of political pressure. Over the next few days, he tried to figure out how to present the Empire's counter-proposal without making it sound like a threat. The Fenrir had trusted him because he'd approached them with honesty and respect. Now he had to somehow convey that the Empire was willing to negotiate while also hinting that refusal could lead to military action. It was, he decided, exactly the kind of impossible diplomatic puzzle that made him glad he was usually just an engineer. The return trip to Fenrir space took 3 days. This time, when Marcus approached the Winter's Fang, he was expected. Alpha Kodiak's voice came through the communications array before Marcus had even finished his approach. Human Marcus Chen, you return quickly. We assume the Empire has responded to our terms. They have, Alpha. They're willing to negotiate, but they want to discuss the details in a formal diplomatic setting. And what else do they want? Marcus wasn't surprised that Alpha Kodiak could hear the reluctance in his voice. The Fenrir were apparently very good at reading emotional undertones. They want full disclosure of everything you know about the quintessium deposits. They feel that any formal agreement requires complete information from both sides. A long pause. And if we decline to share this information? They have contingency plans. Speak plainly, human. Does the Empire threaten war? Marcus closed his eyes. They have 3 battle fleets within a week of your territory. The Empress didn't explicitly threaten military action, but she made it clear that patience has limits. I see. And what is your recommendation? My recommendation is that both sides are making this more complicated than it needs to be. The Empire needs energy. You can provide energy. Everything else is just ego and politics. Another pause, this one accompanied by sounds that Marcus thought might be pack communication, soft growls and whines that the universal translator couldn't interpret. Marcus Chen, you will dock with our ship as before, but this time there are others who wish to meet you. The docking procedure was identical to his first visit, but when Marcus stepped out of his ship, he found the bay filled with Fenrir. Not just the crew of the Winter's Fang, but what appeared to be representatives from other ships. He counted at least 20 of them, all wearing the kind of formal gear that suggested this was some kind of official gathering. Alpha Kodiak stepped forward, but this time he was accompanied by an even larger Fenrir, whose white fur was shot through with silver markings. The new arrival carried himself with an authority that made even Alpha Kodiak seem deferential. Human Marcus Chen, Alpha Kodiak said formally. I present you to Alpha Prime Fenris, leader of the Deep Space Fleet. Marcus activated his sonic modulator and tried to project the deepest respect he could manage. Alpha Prime, I am honored by this meeting. The massive Fenrir studied him with eyes that seemed to see through him completely. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that made Marcus's bones vibrate. Human engineer, you have created quite a disturbance in the ordered patterns of our isolation. Word of your proposal has spread throughout our fleet. I hope that's not a bad thing, Alpha Prime. That remains to be determined. Walk with me. The procession through the ship was different this time. Instead of heading to the command center, they went deeper into the vessel, through corridors that seemed more organic than technological. The lighting here was softer, more natural, creating an almost forest-like atmosphere. They emerged into a vast chamber that Marcus realized must take up a significant portion of the ship's internal volume. The space was filled with what looked like living trees, their branches intertwining overhead to create a canopy of leaves that rustled in a breeze that shouldn't have existed in deep space. The Heart Grove, Alpha Kodiak explained, seeing Marcus's amazement. Every Fenrir ship carries a piece of our home world. Alpha Prime settled onto a moss-covered boulder that had obviously been shaped for seating. The other Fenrir arranged themselves in a circle around the grove, creating what looked very much like a pack gathering. Sit, human, Alpha Prime commanded, and another moss-covered seat rose from the grove floor. Marcus sat, marveling at the sensation of being in a forest while traveling through deep space. The air smelled of pine and earth and growing things. Marcus Chen, Alpha Prime began, his formal tone echoing in the natural space. Your proposal has been discussed by pack leaders throughout our fleet. It has merit, but it also presents complications. What kind of complications? The Fenrir have remained isolated for 3 centuries for good reasons. The galaxy is full of species that seek to dominate rather than cooperate. We withdrew to protect ourselves and our technology from those who would misuse it. But isolation comes with costs too, Marcus pointed out. You've missed out on trade, cultural exchange, technological cooperation. The galaxy has developed without your input. Yes, and in many cases, that development has been disappointing. Alpha Prime gestured, and holographic displays appeared among the trees, showing images of war-torn worlds and environmental destruction. The empire you represent has conquered dozens of species. The Confederation you mentioned has failed to prevent 3 major wars in the past century. Why should we trust any of them with unlimited energy? Marcus considered this carefully. It was a fair question, and one he wasn't sure he could answer satisfactorily. You shouldn't trust them, he said finally. You should trust the process. Explain, If you control the energy source and sell to everyone equally, no single power can dominate the others. The Empire might be aggressive now, but they'll think twice if aggression means losing access to quintessentium energy. Same with everyone else. Alpha Prime's ears tilted forward. You propose to use economic leverage to enforce peaceful behavior. I propose to use basic market principles. As long as everyone depends on you for energy, everyone has an incentive to keep you happy. One of the other Fenrir spoke up, a female with intricate braiding in her white fur. And what prevents multiple powers from allying against us to seize control? The fact that they don't trust each other any more than they trust you. The Empire, the Confederation, the free worlds, they're all competitors. None of them would want to see the others gain exclusive access to quintessentium energy. Alpha Prime stood and began pacing among the trees. Your reasoning has merit, human, but it assumes that economic incentives can overcome political ambitions. History suggests otherwise. Then maybe it's time to try a different approach to history. The Alpha Prime stopped pacing and fixed Marcus with that penetrating stare. You speak of changing the fundamental patterns of galactic civilization. I speak of giving those patterns a new foundation. Right now, the galaxy runs on scarcity. Not enough resources, not enough territory, not enough influence to go around. But if you can provide unlimited clean energy to everyone, scarcity becomes abundance. And you believe this would reduce conflict? I believe it would change the nature of conflict. Instead of fighting over resources, maybe species would compete on innovation, exploration, cultural achievement. Things that make everyone better instead of making someone else worse. The grove fell silent, except for the rustle of leaves in that impossible breeze. Marcus could feel the attention of every Fenrir focused on him, weighing his words against their centuries of experience with galactic politics. Finally, Alpha Prime spoke. Human Marcus Chen, you dream of a better galaxy. It is a beautiful dream, but dreams require power to become reality. You have that power. Do we? The Empire speaks of 3 battle fleets. We know they have more in reserve. If they choose military action, can we resist them? Marcus thought about this. He remembered Alpha Kodiak's casual mention that the asteroid field contained nearly half of the galaxy's known quintessentium reserves. If that was true, the Fenrir position was stronger than anyone realized. Alpha Prime, may I speak honestly? We prefer honest speech. I think the Empire is making a mistake if they assume they can simply take what they want by force. You've been studying those asteroids for centuries. You know exactly what's out there, don't you? The Alpha Prime smiled, revealing teeth that were undeniably predatory. What do you think we know, human? I think you know that the quintessentium deposits are larger than anyone suspects, maybe much larger. And I think you've been preparing for this moment for a very long time. A soft sound filled the grove. The pack communication growls and whines that Marcus had heard before. It took him a moment to realize that the Fenrir were laughing. Perceptive, Alpha Prime said when the laughter subsided. Tell me, what else do you think we know? Marcus felt like he was walking through a minefield, but he pressed on. I think you know that whoever controls those deposits will shape the future of galactic civilization. And I think you've decided it's time to end your isolation, but on your own terms. And what would those terms be? Partnership instead of domination. Cooperation instead of conquest. A chance to prove that different species can work together without one of them having to submit to the others. Alpha Prime moved closer, studying Marcus with those ice-blue eyes. You understand more than most humans would? Why? Because I'm an engineer. I'm used to looking at complex systems and trying to figure out how all the pieces fit together. This isn't really different. It's just a political system instead of a mechanical one. And what is your analysis of this political system? Marcus took a deep breath. This was probably going to determine whether he left this ship alive. I think the current galactic political system is broken. Too much power concentrated in too few hands, too many species that have been marginalized or conquered, too much competition over resources that should be abundant. The Fenrir have the power to change that, but only if you're willing to engage with the system instead of hiding from it. And you believe the Empire can be convinced to accept partnership rather than demanding dominance? I believe the Empire can be convinced to accept reality. If you control the Quintessium and you're willing to trade fairly with everyone, the Empire's choice is simple. Accept your terms or watch their competitors gain an insurmountable advantage. Alpha Prime returned to his seat, settling onto the moss-covered stone with fluid grace. Human Marcus Chen, you have given us much to consider. But there is something you must understand about Fenrir nature. What's that? We are pack hunters. We do not flee from challenges, and we do not submit to threats. If the Empire chooses aggression, we will respond accordingly. What does that mean practically? It means that the Winter's Fang is not the only Fenrir ship in this region. It means that our isolation has given us time to develop technologies that the rest of the galaxy has not seen. And it means that any species that attempts to take by force what we offer freely will discover that the hunt can go both ways. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the grove's climate. How many ships? Enough. Alpha Prime stood again. But let us hope it does not come to that. You spoke of preference for cooperation over conquest. We share that preference. But we are prepared for either path. What do you want me to tell the Empire? Tell them that the Fenrir are willing to meet with their representatives to discuss formal agreements. Tell them that we will share the full extent of our knowledge about the Quintessium deposits in exchange for their commitment to peaceful cooperation. And if they refuse? Tell them that refusal means they will receive nothing from this region of space. No energy, no mining rights, no access of any kind. And tell them that any military action against Fenrir territory will be met with appropriate response. Marcus nodded slowly. Where would you want to meet? Neutral space, the Asterix station in the borderlands. It is controlled by no single power and has facilities for formal diplomacy. When? 7 standard days from now. That should give both sides time to prepare their positions and assemble their negotiating teams. As the meeting broke up, Marcus found himself walking back through the ship with Alpha Kodiak, while the other pack leaders remained in the grove to continue their discussions. This is bigger than I thought, Marcus said quietly. Much bigger, but also much more important. The decisions made in the next few days will echo through galactic history. No pressure, Marcus muttered. Alpha Kodiak's ears tilted in amusement. Human, you have already changed the course of events simply by offering a different perspective. Whatever happens now, know that you have given both sides a chance to choose cooperation over conflict. I just hope they're smart enough to take it. Hope is good, but preparation is better. The Fenrir go to these negotiations ready for any outcome. I suggest the Empire do the same. As Marcus prepared to depart, Alpha Prime appeared in the docking bay for a private word. Human Marcus Chen, there is something you should know before you report to your Empress. What's that? The Fenrir remember our debts. You came to us in peace, spoke to us with respect, and offered solutions instead of threats. Whatever happens in these negotiations, the Fenrir will remember this. I appreciate that, Alpha Prime. More than appreciation. If these negotiations fail and conflict becomes inevitable, you will be given safe passage from Fenrir space. Your ship will be marked as protected, and no Fenrir weapon will fire upon you. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. Thank you. And if the negotiations succeed, you will have a place among the Fenrir for as long as you wish it. Your insight into human thinking could be valuable as we learn to work with other species again. I'll consider it seriously. Good. Now go, and carry our message to the Empire. Tell them that the Fenrir offer partnership, but we do not beg for it. The journey back to the trade station felt different this time. Marcus found himself thinking not just about the immediate negotiations, but about the larger implications of what was happening. If the Fenrir really did control nearly half the galaxy's quintessium reserves, they had the power to reshape galactic civilization. The question was whether the Empire would be wise enough to accept partnership or proud enough to choose conflict. Marcus suspected he was about to find out which was more important to them, getting what they wanted or getting it on their own terms. When he arrived at the station, he found that word of his return had preceded him. Commander Vorth met him personally at the docking bay, along with what appeared to be a full honor guard of Imperial troops. Engineer Chen, the commander said formally, the Empress requests your immediate presence. There have been developments. What kind of developments? The kind best discussed in secure surroundings. As they walked through the station, Marcus noticed that the normally busy corridors seemed unusually quiet. The various alien species that usually bustled about their business were conspicuously absent, and Imperial security teams were posted at every major intersection. Commander, what's going on? The Empress will explain everything. But when they reached the command center, Marcus found that the Empress was not alone. The room was filled with Imperial officers in dress uniforms, and holographic displays showed star charts and fleet dispositions. This was clearly a military planning session. The Empress looked up as Marcus entered, her expression unreadable. Engineer Chen, report. The Fenrir are willing to meet for formal negotiations, 7 days from now at Asterix Station in the Borderlands. They're prepared to share full information about the quintessium deposits in exchange for Imperial commitment to peaceful cooperation. And their military posture? Marcus hesitated. They're prepared for any eventuality, Your Majesty. Specifics. They wouldn't give specifics, but Alpha Prime made it clear that the Winter's Fang is not the only Fenrir ship in the region. One of the Imperial officers spoke up. Our intelligence suggests that the Fenrir Deep Space Fleet consists of no more than 12 vessels, hardly a match for Imperial battle groups. With respect, sir, I think your intelligence may be incomplete. The officer bristled. Are you questioning Imperial intelligence capabilities? I'm questioning whether anyone really knows what the Fenrir have been doing during 3 centuries of isolation. The Empress raised a hand for silence. Engineer Chen, did the Fenrir make any specific threats? They said that any military action against their territory would be met with appropriate response, but they also emphasized their preference for peaceful cooperation. I see. The Empress moved to the central display, which showed the asteroid field where the quintessium deposits were located. And the scope of the deposits? They're prepared to share that information at the negotiations. Not before? Marcus shook his head. They want formal talks with official negotiators. The Empress was quiet for a moment, studying the star charts. Finally, she spoke to the assembled officers. Gentlemen, we will proceed with the negotiations as requested, but we will also position our fleets for rapid response if those negotiations fail. Your Majesty, Marcus said. The Fenrir were very clear about their position. Any show of military force could be seen as a threat. Let them see it as a threat. The Empire negotiates from a position of strength, not weakness. Marcus felt his heart sink. This was exactly the kind of approach that could turn a diplomatic opportunity into a galactic war. Your Majesty, if I may suggest, you may not. The Empress turned to face him, her purple eyes flashing with authority. Engineer Chen, you have done excellent work facilitating communication, but you are not a diplomat, and you are not a military strategist. The Empire will handle these negotiations in its own way. And if that way leads to war, then war it will be. The Empire has faced stronger opponents than a handful of wolf ships. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to explain that the Fenrir might be far more dangerous than the Empire realized. But looking around the room at all the uniformed officers and their confident expressions, he realized that his words wouldn't matter. The Empire had made its decision. All he could do now was hope that the negotiations would somehow succeed despite the military posturing. And if they didn't, well, the galaxy was about to discover what 3 centuries of Fenrir isolation had actually produced. He just hoped he wouldn't be around to see the results. Asterix Station hung in the void like a massive metal flower, its petals spreading in all directions to accommodate the dozen different species that called it home. Located in the neutral borderlands, it served as a meeting point for civilizations that couldn't agree on anything except the need for somewhere to conduct business. Marcus arrived 3 days before the scheduled negotiations aboard a fast Imperial courier ship. He wasn't part of the official delegation. That honor belonged to Lord Admiral Thessarian and a team of career diplomats, but Empress Zaria had insisted he attend as a technical advisor. The station's main docking bay was already busy with activity. Marcus could see ships from across the galaxy, sleek Confederation vessels, blocky free-world cargo haulers, and the unmistakable organic curves of several species he couldn't immediately identify. And there, occupying an entire section of the bay by themselves, were 3 Fenrir ships. They were larger than the Winter's Fang, and their hull designs were more elaborate. Flowing lines that seemed to shift in the station's lighting, weapon ports that looked like they'd been grown rather than built, and that same matte black finish that seemed to absorb light. Even docked and powered down, they looked dangerous. "Impressive, aren't they?" said a voice behind him. Marcus turned to find Lord Admiral Thessarian studying the Fenrir ships with professional interest. The Admiral was tall and distinguished, with the kind of bearing that came from commanding star fleets for decades. "They're beautiful," Marcus admitted, "but they're also warships." "Indeed. Our intelligence estimates suggest each of those vessels could match one of our heavy cruisers in combat." The Admiral's tone was thoughtful rather than concerned. "Fortunately, we brought more than 3 heavy cruisers." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Sir, how many ships did the Empire bring?" 2 full battle groups, 47 vessels, including 3 dreadnoughts." The Admiral smiled confidently. "The Fenrir may be advanced, but they're still severely outnumbered. Admiral, with respect, that might not be the kind of leverage you think it is." "Explain." Marcus chose his words carefully. "The Fenrir withdrew from galactic politics specifically to avoid this kind of military pressure. If they see the Imperial fleet as a threat, they might decide that isolation is preferable to negotiation. Let them decide that. The Empire has other options. Such as? Such as taking what we need rather than asking for it." Marcus stared at the Admiral. "You're talking about conquering Fenrir territory." "I'm talking about protecting Imperial interests. The galaxy needs quintessium energy. If the Fenrir won't provide it through reasonable negotiation, then alternative methods become necessary. Alternative methods that could start a galactic war." "Wars have been fought over less important resources, engineer, and the Empire has never lost a war." As they spoke, Marcus noticed movement around the Fenrir ships. Figures in environmental suits were moving between the vessels, but their movements seemed too fluid, too coordinated to be ordinary crew rotations. It looked more like, "Admiral, are those figures wearing some kind of powered armor?" The Admiral looked more closely at the Fenrir ships. "Difficult to tell from this distance." "Why?" "Because if they are, it might suggest the Fenrir are taking security more seriously than we thought." Before the Admiral could respond, the station's intercom system crackled to life. Attention all vessels and station personnel. We are detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching the station. All ships are advised to maintain current positions until the arrivals have been identified. Through the bay's massive transparasteel windows, Marcus could see the flashes of light that indicated ships dropping out of hyperspace. 1, 2, 5, 10. He stopped counting at 20. "Admiral," one of the Imperial communications officers called out, "we're receiving identification signals from the new arrivals. They're Fenrir vessels." The Admiral's confident expression flickered. "How many?" 23 ships, sir. Various classes, but our sensors are having trouble getting detailed readings." Marcus moved closer to the window, trying to get a better view of the new arrivals. The Fenrir fleet was arranging itself in a formation that looked casual, but probably wasn't. Each ship was maintaining perfect spacing relative to the others, creating overlapping fields of fire that would cover any approach to the station. "They're not just here for negotiations," Marcus said quietly. "No," the Admiral agreed. "They're making a statement." Over the next few hours, representatives from various galactic powers arrived at the station. The Confederation sent a small diplomatic team. The Free Worlds Alliance sent observers. Several minor species sent representatives, apparently hoping to secure their own access to quintessium energy. But it was clear that the real business would be conducted between the Empire and the Fenrir. The negotiations were scheduled to begin the following morning in the station's largest conference room. Marcus spent the evening reviewing everything he knew about Fenrir culture and Imperial diplomatic protocols, trying to find some common ground that might prevent the talks from collapsing into mutual threats. He was studying star charts in his quarters when his door chimed. He opened it to find Alpha Kodiak standing in the corridor, apparently unescorted and unconcerned about being alone on a station full of potential enemies. "Marcus Chen," the Fenrir said formally. "I request a moment of your time." "Of course, Alpha. Please come in." Alpha Kodiak entered the small quarters, moving with that fluid grace that made every gesture seem like part of a dance. He was wearing formal gear, intricately designed armor that looked both ceremonial and functional. "You seem troubled, human." Marcus poured himself a cup of coffee and offered one to his guest, who declined politely. "I'm worried about tomorrow's negotiations. Both sides seem to be preparing for conflict rather than cooperation." "An accurate assessment. The Empire brings 47 warships to a diplomatic meeting. We respond with 23. Neither side demonstrates great faith in peaceful resolution. Is there any way to prevent this from escalating?" Alpha Kodiak settled into the room's single chair, which creaked slightly under his weight. "That depends largely on Imperial expectations. If they expect us to submit to their terms simply because they have more ships, they will be disappointed. And if they're disappointed, then tomorrow's negotiations may be the last peaceful communication between our species for some time." Marcus sat down on his bunk, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "Alpha, is there anything I can do? Any way to help both sides understand each other?" "You have already done much, Marcus Chen. But there are currents in this situation that go deeper than quintessium mining rights." "What do you mean?" "The Empire seeks to maintain its dominance over galactic civilization. The Fenrir seek to end our isolation without submitting to foreign rule. These goals may be fundamentally incompatible." Marcus thought about this. What if there was a way to give the Empire what they need without compromising Fenrir independence? Speak your thoughts. What if the Fenrir offered to share their energy extraction technology with other species? Not just selling energy, but teaching others to produce it themselves. Alpha Kodiak's ears tilted forward with interest. "Continue." "If multiple species had access to quintessium technology, no single power could control the market. The Empire would get the energy they need, but they couldn't use that energy to dominate others. And the Fenrir would benefit how? By becoming teachers instead of suppliers. Instead of mining asteroids forever, you'd be helping others develop their own sustainable energy sources. It's more consistent with scientific exploration than industrial production. The Alpha considered this. An interesting proposal, but it assumes other species could master our technology. Could they? Some could. Others would struggle. Humans, I believe, would adapt quickly. Because of our flexible thinking. Because of your willingness to experiment and modify existing techniques. Most species would try to replicate our methods exactly. Humans would try to improve them. Marcus felt a spark of excitement. That could actually work better than exact replication. Each species could develop their own variations of the technology suited to their specific needs and capabilities. A galaxy full of different energy technologies, all based on the same fundamental principles. Alpha Kodiak stood and began pacing the small room. It would make energy abundant while preventing any single power from controlling it. Would the Fenrir consider such an approach? It has merit, but it would require the Empire to accept a very different kind of agreement than they're expecting. What kind of agreement? One based on mutual benefit rather than imperial advantage, one that strengthens the entire galaxy rather than just the Empire. Marcus nodded slowly. And if the Empire rejects that kind of agreement? Alpha Kodiak stopped pacing and fixed Marcus with that penetrating stare. Then the Fenrir will protect our technology and our territory by whatever means necessary. Even if it means war with the Empire? Even then. We did not end 3 centuries of isolation just to become another imperial client state. After Alpha Kodiak left, Marcus spent hours pacing his own quarters, trying to figure out how to present this new proposal to the imperial delegation. Lord Admiral Thessarian was a career military officer who thought in terms of imperial dominance. The diplomatic team was trained to negotiate from positions of strength. Neither group was likely to embrace an approach based on sharing technology and creating competitors. But as Marcus thought about the alternative, a war between the Empire and the Fenrir that could draw in every major power in the galaxy, he realized he had to try. The next morning, the conference room was filled with tension, thick enough to cut with a knife. The imperial delegation sat on one side of the massive table, their formal uniforms creating an intimidating display of military authority. The Fenrir delegation sat opposite them, 5 representatives including Alpha Prime Fenris and Alpha Kodiak. Between them, neutral observers from the Confederation, Free Worlds, and several minor species watched nervously. Everyone understood that the decisions made in this room would shape galactic politics for decades to come. Lord Admiral Thessarian opened the negotiations with a formal statement of imperial position. The Empire needed guaranteed access to quintessium energy. They were willing to pay fair market prices, but they required assurance that supply would not be interrupted by political considerations. Alpha Prime responded with equal formality. The Fenrir controlled the quintessium deposits in sovereign territory. They were willing to sell energy to any civilization at equitable rates, but they would not accept external control over their territory or their technology. For the next 3 hours, both sides restated their positions in increasingly elaborate ways without making any real progress. The Empire wanted guarantees and preferential treatment. The Fenrir wanted independence and equal relationships. Finally, during a break, Marcus approached Lord Admiral Thessarian. Admiral, may I suggest a different approach? Engineer, this is a diplomatic negotiation, not an engineering problem. Actually, sir, it's both. The fundamental issue is how to distribute a scarce resource fairly while maintaining stability. That's exactly the kind of problem engineers deal with all the time. The Admiral looked skeptical but gestured for Marcus to continue. What if instead of fighting over who controls the technology, we focused on how to make it available to everyone? Explain. Marcus outlined his conversation with Alpha Kodiak, describing the possibility of sharing quintessium technology with multiple species rather than concentrating production in Fenrir hands. The Admiral listened thoughtfully. It's an interesting concept, but it has obvious problems. If everyone has access to unlimited energy, the Empire loses a significant strategic advantage. But the Empire also gains something more valuable, a galaxy full of prosperous trading partners instead of desperate competitors. That's a very optimistic view, Engineer. It's a practical view, Admiral. Right now, energy scarcity forces civilizations to compete for resources. If energy becomes abundant, that competition shifts to innovation, exploration, trade, things that benefit everyone. The Admiral was quiet for a moment, considering this. And you believe the Fenrir would actually share their technology? I believe they'd prefer it to a war that could last decades and cost millions of lives. When the negotiations resumed, Marcus was given permission to present his proposal to both delegations. He stood at the head of the table, looking out at faces that ranged from skeptical to openly hostile. "Honored delegates," he began, "I'd like to suggest that we're approaching this problem from the wrong angle. Instead of fighting over who controls quintessentium energy, what if we focused on how to make it available to everyone?" Alpha Prime's ears tilted forward with interest. Lord Admiral Thessarian maintained a carefully neutral expression. The other observers leaned forward, clearly intrigued. The Fenrir have developed advanced extraction and processing techniques over centuries of research. Rather than keeping that knowledge secret or selling only the final product, what if they offered to teach those techniques to other species? "That's preposterous," snapped Lord High Diplomat Varen, the Empire's chief negotiator. "No civilization shares military-grade technology freely." "This isn't military technology," Marcus countered. "It's energy technology, and sharing it benefits everyone, including the Empire." "How do you figure that?" Marcus activated the conference room's holographic display, showing a simplified model of galactic civilization. "Right now, energy scarcity creates a zero-sum game. When one civilization gets more energy, others get less. But if everyone has access to unlimited clean energy, the entire galaxy becomes more prosperous." He manipulated the display to show trade routes, technological development, and resource allocation under different scenarios. A prosperous galaxy means more customers for Imperial goods, more partners for Imperial ventures, more allies for Imperial security. Alpha Prime spoke for the first time since the formal presentations. "The human speaks wisdom, but his proposal requires trust that may not exist." "What kind of trust?" asked Admiral Thessarian. "Trust that the Empire would accept a galaxy of equals rather than seeking to dominate such a galaxy." The room fell silent. It was, Marcus realized, the fundamental question underlying everything else. Could the Empire accept a multipolar galaxy where they were first among equals rather than unquestioned rulers? Lord High Diplomat Varen's face had turned an interesting shade of purple. "The Empire has brought peace and order to dozens of star systems. We have prevented countless wars and established trade networks that benefit everyone. By conquering those who disagreed with your methods," Alpha Kodiak said quietly, "by providing stability where there was chaos, by imposing your will where others sought independence." The tension in the room spiked dramatically. Marcus could see hands moving toward weapons, and he realized the negotiations were about to collapse entirely. "Wait," he said urgently. "This is exactly the kind of argument that's kept the galaxy in conflict for centuries. Everyone thinks their way is the only right way, so they try to force others to accept it." He stood up, moving to the center of the room where he could see all the delegates clearly. "But what if there isn't one right way? What if different species need different approaches to government, trade, technology? What if the goal should be cooperation rather than uniformity?" "Chaos," Diplomat Varen said dismissively. "Without common standards and unified authority, you get chaos." "Or you get diversity," Marcus countered. "Look at this station. Dozens of species, dozens of governments, dozens of different approaches to life, but somehow they all manage to work together when they need to." This station exists in neutral space precisely because no one can agree on common standards, Admiral Thessarian pointed out. Exactly. And it works because no one is trying to force their standards on anyone else. They just focus on mutually beneficial cooperation. Alpha Prime stood, his massive frame commanding attention from everyone in the room. The human's words echo ancient Fenrir wisdom. The strongest pack is not the one that dominates all others, but the one that learns to hunt with allies. Pretty words, Diplomat Varen said, but the galaxy requires practical governance, not philosophical ideals. Then let me be practical, Marcus said. The Fenrir have 23 warships outside this station. You have 47, but they're not the only ones with an interest in this discussion. He gestured toward the neutral observers. The Confederation has 36 systems that need energy. The free worlds have mining operations in 17 sectors. The independent systems control key trade routes. If the Fenrir offer energy technology to everyone and the Empire tries to prevent it, who do you think all those other powers will support? Admiral Thessarian's expression grew thoughtful. You're suggesting that Imperial military superiority wouldn't matter if we faced a coalition of all other major powers. I'm suggesting that trying to control quintessium technology through force would unite the entire galaxy against the Empire. And even Imperial fleets can't fight everyone at once. The room fell silent again as everyone considered the implications. Marcus could see the calculations running behind the Admiral's eyes. Fleet strengths, alliance possibilities, supply lines, public opinion. Finally, Alpha Prime broke the silence. Human Marcus Chen speaks of cooperation, but words alone do not build trust. If the Empire truly seeks partnership rather than dominance, let them prove it. How? Asked Admiral Thessarian. Withdraw your battle fleets from Fenrir space. Meet with us as equals rather than as conquerors seeking to intimidate. That's impossible. The Empire cannot appear weak. The Empire can appear confident enough in its position to negotiate without threats. Diplomat Varen leaned forward aggressively. The Fenrir make demands while offering nothing in return. This is not negotiation. We offer everything in return, Alpha Kodiak said calmly. We offer technology that could transform galactic civilization. We offer partnership with a species that has avoided contact for 3 centuries. We offer the opportunity to build something new instead of perpetuating old patterns of conquest and domination. And if we refuse, then you receive nothing. No technology, no energy, no access to Fenrir space. And you face the judgment of a galaxy that will know you chose war over cooperation. The negotiations broke for lunch with both sides clearly frustrated. Marcus found himself eating alone in the station's main cafeteria, trying to figure out what he could do to keep the talks from collapsing completely. He was picking at a sandwich when someone sat down across from him. He looked up to see a woman in Confederation uniform, Commander Sarah Chen, according to her name tag. Any relation? She asked, nodding at his own name badge. Probably distant cousins, Marcus replied. Chen is a common name. I'm Sarah. I've been observing the negotiations for the Confederation. Marcus, I've been trying not to make them worse. Sarah smiled. From what I've heard, you've been doing most of the creative thinking in there. The technology sharing proposal is brilliant. It's also probably impossible. Neither side trusts the other enough to make it work. Maybe they don't have to trust each other. Maybe they just have to trust the process. Marcus looked at her more closely. What do you mean? What if the technology sharing was administered by a neutral party? Someone who doesn't have a stake in the political outcomes. Like who? Like the Borderland Council. They already manage trade disputes, territorial negotiations, refugee settlements. They're not aligned with any major power, and they have a reputation for fairness. Marcus felt a spark of excitement. That could actually work. The Fenrir share their technology with the Council, who then make it available to qualified applicants regardless of political affiliation. Exactly. The Empire gets access, but so does everyone else. No one gains a permanent advantage, but everyone benefits. Would the Council agree to that kind of responsibility? They might, especially if the alternative is a galactic war that would destabilize all the neutral systems. Marcus stood up quickly, leaving his sandwich half-eaten. I need to talk to some people. Over the next hour, Marcus approached delegates from several neutral powers, explaining Sarah's suggestion and gauging their reactions. The response was cautiously positive. The Borderland Council had always been interested in expanding their role as galactic mediators, and administering quintessium technology would give them significant influence. But the real question was whether the Empire and the Fenrir would accept neutral administration of such important technology. When the negotiations resumed, Marcus requested permission to present the modified proposal. This time, he was joined by Commander Chen and representatives from 3 neutral powers. Honored delegates, Marcus began, we'd like to propose a solution that addresses both sides' fundamental concerns. He activated the holographic display again, this time showing a complex organizational chart. The Fenrir would share their quintessium technology with the Borderland Council, who would establish a technology transfer authority. This authority would evaluate applications from any civilization, providing technology and training based on objective criteria rather than political considerations. Admiral Thessarian leaned forward. And who controls this authority? No one, Commander Chen replied. It operates independently, funded by licensing fees from technology recipients. Its board includes representatives from all major galactic powers, with decisions made by consensus. Meaning the Empire has no more influence than anyone else, Diplomat Varen said suspiciously. Meaning everyone has equal influence, Marcus corrected. Including the Empire. Alpha Prime studied the proposal carefully. This arrangement would ensure the technology reaches all species fairly. That's the goal. Applications would be evaluated based on technical capability, safety protocols, and intended use. Politics wouldn't be a factor. And enforcement? The authority would have the power to revoke licenses for misuse or violation of agreements. They'd also have the backing of the Borderland Defense Force for serious violations. The room buzzed with quiet conversations as delegates discussed the proposal with their advisors. Marcus could see interest in many faces, but also skepticism and concern. Finally, Alpha Prime stood to address the room formally. The Fenrir find this proposal acceptable in principle. We are willing to share our technology through such an authority, provided adequate safeguards exist against military misuse. All eyes turned to the Imperial delegation. Admiral Thessarian and Diplomat Varen exchanged glances, clearly conducting some kind of silent communication. The Empire requires time to consider this proposal, Admiral Thessarian said finally. We cannot commit to such a significant change in galactic governance without proper consultation. How much time? Alpha Prime asked. 72 hours. The Fenrir delegation conferred among themselves in that rapid, growling pack speech that the universal translators couldn't handle. Finally, Alpha Prime nodded. Acceptable. But understand that delay serves no one's interests. Every day we spend in negotiations is another day the galaxy goes without the energy it needs. As the formal session ended, Marcus found himself surrounded by delegates from various powers, all wanting to discuss details of the technology transfer proposal. It was clear that the idea had captured imaginations across the political spectrum. But it was also clear that everything depended on Imperial acceptance. If the Empire rejected the proposal, the alternatives were either Fenrir monopoly or outright war. Neither option would serve galactic interests. That evening, Marcus was summoned to Admiral Thessarian's quarters for a private discussion. He found the Admiral studying star charts and fleet deployments, clearly weighing military options. Sit down, engineer. We need to talk. Marcus took the offered chair, noting that the Admiral's quarters were Spartan and functional. No personal items, no decorations, just the tools of military command. Admiral, I hope you're considering the technology transfer proposal seriously. I'm considering all our options seriously, including the military ones. Sir, a war with the Fenrir would be catastrophic. Even if the Empire won, the cost would be enormous. The cost of Imperial weakness would be even greater. The Admiral turned away from the star charts to face Marcus directly. Engineer, you seem to have developed considerable sympathy for the Fenrir position. I've developed appreciation for the possibilities of cooperation over conflict. And you believe the Empire should accept a secondary role in galactic governance? Marcus chose his words carefully. I believe the Empire should accept a leadership role in galactic cooperation. There's a difference. Explain. The Empire has the largest economy, the most advanced military, the most extensive trade networks. In a cooperative galaxy, those advantages would make you natural leaders. But leadership through partnership is stronger than leadership through dominance. Pretty words. But leadership requires the ability to enforce decisions. Not if everyone benefits from following them voluntarily. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, studying Marcus with the same intensity he'd probably used to evaluate enemy positions during his military career. Engineer, what you're proposing would fundamentally change the nature of Imperial power. I'm proposing that it would strengthen Imperial power by giving it a more stable foundation. Or it would weaken Imperial power by creating competitors where none existed before. Marcus leaned forward. Admiral, the Empire is already facing competitors. The Confederation, the free worlds, the independent systems, they're all growing stronger while the Empire struggles to maintain control over territories that don't want to be controlled. Those struggles are temporary. Are they? How many rebellions has the Empire faced in the last decade? How many systems have declared independence? How many allies have become neutral or switched sides? The Admiral's expression darkened. The galaxy requires stability, and stability requires legitimacy. People follow leaders they respect, not just leaders they fear. Fear is often more reliable than respect, but it's also more fragile. Respect lasts. Fear breeds resentment, and resentment breeds resistance. The conversation continued late into the evening, with both men exploring the implications of different approaches to galactic governance. Marcus found himself surprised by the Admiral's depth of political understanding. This wasn't just a military officer thinking in terms of force projection. This was a strategic thinker grappling with fundamental questions about power and authority. Finally, as the station's artificial night cycle approached, the Admiral asked the question Marcus had been dreading. Engineer, if you were in my position, what would you recommend to the Empress? Marcus took a deep breath. I would recommend accepting the technology transfer proposal, but with Imperial leadership of the process. How? The Empire has the most experience with large-scale administration and regulatory oversight. Offer to provide the administrative infrastructure for the Technology Transfer Authority, staff it with Imperial bureaucrats, but under neutral oversight. And the benefit to the Empire? The Empire becomes indispensable to the process. Every civilization that wants quintessium technology has to work through Imperial systems and Imperial personnel. You're not just participants in the new order, you're the ones who make it function. The Admiral's eyes lit up with understanding. Soft power rather than hard power. Exactly. The Empire becomes the galaxy's energy coordinator, trade facilitator, and technology administrator. People depend on you because you provide essential services, not because you threaten them with conquest. And if the Fenrir object to Imperial administration? They won't, if the oversight remains truly neutral. They care about fair distribution of technology, not who handles the paperwork. The Admiral stood and moved to his window. looking out at the Fenrir ships hanging in space like patient predators. Engineer, you're asking the Empire to gamble its entire strategic position on an untested theory of galactic cooperation. I'm asking the Empire to invest in a stable future rather than fighting to maintain an unstable present. And if you're wrong? If cooperation fails and we're left weaker than before? Marcus joined him at the window, looking out at the assembled fleets of multiple civilizations. Admiral, if cooperation fails, we're all going to have bigger problems than Imperial strategic position. The next day brought unexpected news. During the night, 3 more Fenrir fleets had arrived in the system. The total count was now over 70 Fenrir vessels, representing the largest concentration of their ships seen in 3 centuries. But even more surprising was the message that came with them. Alpha Prime Fenris was not the highest-ranking Fenrir present. That honor belonged to someone called the Great Alpha, the supreme leader of all Fenrir people. The Great Alpha requested a meeting with Marcus personally. "Why does their supreme leader want to see me?" Marcus asked Admiral Thessarian. "Unknown, but you're going to that meeting with a full security detail." "Sir, that would be seen as a provocation. The Fenrir value personal courage. The Empire values your safety, engineer. You've become too important to risk." In the end, they compromised. Marcus would meet with the Great Alpha, but in a public space with witnesses from multiple civilizations present. The meeting took place in the station's main observation lounge, a vast chamber with transparent walls that offered panoramic views of space. Marcus arrived to find the area filled with representatives from every major power, all clearly curious about what the Fenrir Supreme Leader had to say. The Great Alpha was not what Marcus had expected. Where Alpha Prime had been large and imposing, the Great Alpha was smaller and more delicate, with fur that was pure silver rather than white. But when those ancient eyes fixed on Marcus, he felt like he was being examined by someone who had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. "Human Marcus Chen," the Great Alpha said, their voice carrying harmonics that made the universal translator work over time. "You have caused quite a stir among my people." "I hope that's not a bad thing, Great Alpha. Change is never entirely good or bad. It simply is. The question is whether change serves life or opposes it." The Great Alpha moved closer, studying Marcus with obvious curiosity. "Your species is very young by galactic standards, yet you propose solutions that have eluded older and wiser civilizations. Maybe that's because we haven't learned that certain things are impossible yet." "Indeed." The Great Alpha's ears tilted in what Marcus was learning to recognize as amusement. "Tell me, young human, what do you see when you look at the galaxy?" Marcus glanced around the observation lounge, taking in the representatives of dozens of species all gathered in one place. "I see enormous diversity, different forms of intelligence, different approaches to problems, different strengths and weaknesses. But I also see potential for cooperation that most people seem to miss. Because most people focus on differences rather than commonalities. Because most people assume that differences have to mean conflict. But engineering teaches you that different components can work together to create something stronger than any individual part. And you believe galactic civilization can be engineered? I believe it can be improved through better design. Right now, the system encourages competition and conflict, but it could be redesigned to encourage cooperation and mutual benefit." The Great Alpha was quiet for a long moment, those ancient eyes never leaving Marcus's face. "Human Marcus Chen, 3 centuries ago, my people withdrew from galactic civilization because we saw too much aggression, too much conquest, too little wisdom. We hoped that time would bring maturity to the younger species. And has it? In some ways. The galaxy has learned to fear the consequences of total war, but it has not learned to embrace the benefits of total cooperation." Marcus felt a chill of understanding. "You've been waiting for someone to show that cooperation was possible." We have been waiting for the right moment to emerge from isolation. Your proposal suggests that moment may have arrived. But cooperation requires trust, and trust requires proof. Words alone are insufficient. The great Alpha gestured toward the windows, where the assembled fleets hung in space like opposing armies. Your empire brings weapons to a diplomatic meeting. This does not suggest trust. They're afraid, Marcus said. The empire is used to being the strongest power in any situation. Dealing with equals makes them nervous. Fear is understandable, but fear-driven decisions are rarely wise ones. What would convince the empire to overcome their fear? The great Alpha smiled, revealing teeth that were definitely predatory, but somehow seemed gentle rather than threatening. Perhaps the same thing that convinced us to overcome ours, which is proof that the benefits of cooperation outweigh the risks of isolation. Before Marcus could ask what that meant, the great Alpha turned to address the entire observation lounge. "Representatives of the galaxy," they said, their voice carrying easily across the vast space. "The Fenrir have a gift to offer." The chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. For 3 centuries, we have developed technologies not just for energy extraction, but for environmental restoration, medical advancement, agricultural enhancement, and space exploration. We offer to share all of this knowledge freely with any civilization that commits to peaceful cooperation. A buzz of excited conversation filled the chamber. This was far beyond what anyone had expected. The only requirement is that recipient civilizations agree to use these technologies for the benefit of their people rather than the conquest of their neighbors. We will monitor compliance, and we will revoke access for those who violate these principles. Marcus felt his heart racing. This wasn't just about Quintessium anymore. This was about transforming galactic civilization entirely. Furthermore, the great Alpha continued, we propose the establishment of a Galactic Cooperation Council, with representatives from all interested civilizations. This council would coordinate technology transfer, mediate disputes, and work to prevent conflicts before they begin. Admiral Thessarian stepped forward. And who would control this council? No one would control it. Everyone would participate in it. Decisions would be made by consensus, with each civilization having influence proportional to their contribution to galactic stability and prosperity. That's impossibly idealistic, Diplomat Varen protested. You can't govern through consensus. Can you not? The Fenrir have done so for millennia. The Fenrir are a single species with shared values. The galaxy contains hundreds of species with conflicting interests. Perhaps those conflicts exist because there has been no framework for resolving them peacefully. Marcus found himself stepping forward. Great Alpha. What would Imperial participation in this council look like? The Empire would be welcome as a founding member. Their administrative capabilities would be essential for managing the technological transfers. Their security forces could help enforce compliance with cooperation agreements. Their trade networks could distribute benefits throughout the galaxy. And in return,